There is a plastic square in somebody's attic with 100 megabytes of your life on it. Somewhere in the same box sits the drive that used to read it. In 1998, that drive started making a sound. Click, pause, click. The sound was not the worst part. The disk you pulled out afterward could carry the damage into the next machine it touched. Before the sound, there was the promise. In the middle of the 1990s, every home computer in America shipped with a slot that held 1.44 megabytes. That was the floppy. It held a term paper. It did not hold a photograph, and it never held a song. Then, a company out of Utah started selling a beige box about the size of a paperback. It plugged into the back of your machine and it swallowed 100 megabytes at a time. 70 floppies. One plastic square. $19.95 a disk. For 6 years, that box was everywhere. School computer labs bought them by the cart. Design studios ran their entire business off them. Bands mailed demos on them. Your dad kept the tax returns on one and wrote the year on the label in marker. And then, inside about 30 months, the company behind it went from the most talked about stock in the United States to a class action lawsuit covering 28 million buyers, and finally to a going out price of $213 million. 3 separate things killed it. 2 of them are sitting in court records, and you can read them today. The third is a single number that the company never released to anybody, and by the end of this, you are going to understand exactly why. The company was called Iomega, and it started in 1980 in Roy, Utah, which is a town of about 40,000 people north of Salt Lake City. For its first 14 years, it was an engineering company that sold storage to professionals. The Bernoulli box. Expensive, well-built, invisible to normal people. Then in 1994, a man named Kim Edwards took over as chief executive, and he changed what kind of company it was. Not the technology, the pitch. Edwards ran Iomega as a marketing company that happened to make drives, and that decision is the reason the thing ended up in your house instead of in a server room. Look at how he sold it. In February of 1996, the company started buying television time on cable news channels and spot ads across 6 major metro markets. Storage companies did not do that. Storage was sold in trade magazines to system administrators. Edwards sold 100 megabytes the way a car company sells a car, and the line the campaign ran on was because it is your stuff. Your stuff. Not your data. Not your files. The photographs, the demo tape, the letters, the thing you would be sick about losing. It worked well enough that Vogue, a fashion magazine with no earthly reason to care about disk drives, put the zip drive on its list of the 10 most wanted objects of the year. A beige box out of Roy, Utah, listed as an object of desire. The zip drive shipped in March of 1995 at $199. It worked. That is the part people forget when they tell this story as a joke. You slid the disk in, it caught, it spun up, and you had 100 megabytes that you could put in a jacket pocket. Compared to what everyone had the week before, it felt like cheating. Iomega's revenue in 1995 was $362 million. In 1996, it was $1.2 billion. By the end of that year, the company had sold more than 12 million drives. That is a fast enough climb to break a company all by itself. It also did something stranger. It made the stock into a national sport. Here is what the record shows, and you have to keep the dates straight for it to land. 2 years before the spring of 1996, Iomega shares were worth less than 67 cents. By May of that year, they were trading around $150. Deseret News, the paper in the company's own home state, clocked a 1-year gain of 2,135%. The market value of a disk drive company from Roy, Utah, reached $6.4 billion. There were 2 stock splits inside 8 months. 3 for 1 in late 1995, 2 for 1 in May of 1996. And this is where it stops being a normal 90s tech story, because the buying was not coming from Wall Street. It was coming from message boards, The same message boards your neighbor was reading at midnight. Iomega was the stock that early online investors, the motley fool crowd, found before the analysts did. On June 18th, 1996, 16.7 million shares changed hands in a single day. That was more than 10% of the entire float, traded in one session, on a company that made a plastic disk drive. In November of 1996, it moved off the NASDAQ and onto the New York Stock Exchange, and the ticker changed from IOMG to IOM. What gets me about this stretch is not the greed. It is the timing. Every dollar of that valuation was priced on the assumption that the drives kept working. Nobody had checked that assumption yet. So that is the rise, and it is a good rise, and if the story ended there, you would still see zip disks in stores. It does not end there. Because at the exact moment the stock was peaking, drives that had been shipped a year earlier were starting to fail in a way that nobody had a name for. Then, somebody gave it one. The phrase "click of death" shows up in print as early as January 30th, 1998. It spread because it was accurate and because it required no explanation. If you had heard it once, you never needed it explained. And look at how it traveled. Because that matters as much as the defect. There was no social media then. It moved through Usenet news groups, one of them named after the drives themselves, where owners posted the same 3 sentences over and over. My drive started clicking. I put a good disk in it. Now the good disk clicks too. It moved through Macintosh user groups and through school district technology coordinators who had bought 40 of the things at once. The company was fighting a rumor that had a sound. Anyone who had heard it once could make the noise for you. Here is what was physically happening. Inside the drive, the read and write head rides across the surface of the disk. In the failing units, that head went out of alignment. When a misaligned head cannot find the track it is looking for, it retracts, resets, and tries again, and the mechanism makes a hard mechanical snap every time it does. So the drive sits there and clicks, over and over, at about 1-second intervals, while your files sit on the other side of a piece of metal that can no longer find them. Then comes the part that turned a hardware defect into something closer to an outbreak. A drive with a damaged head does not only fail to read the disk, it can physically damage the surface of the disk it is holding. And a damaged disk, carried across the office and pushed into a healthy drive, can damage that drive's head. Which then damages the next disk, which travels to the next machine. It was contagious. Rarely, according to the people who studied it most carefully. But rarely and never are not the same word when the thing being lost is every file you own. Think about what that meant in a school lab in 1998. One bad drive on one desk, 30 students carrying disks between machines all week, and by Friday the room is a quarantine zone that nobody knows is a quarantine zone. Nobody at the time could tell you how many rooms were like that, and that missing count is the number I told you about at the start. Hold on to it. It comes back twice, and the second time it changes what the whole story is about. The claimed cause, as the lawsuit would later put it, was 2 things working together: metal debris that got onto the disks, and a lubricant that broke down over time and built up on the reading mechanism. And it was not only the little drive. In 1996, Iomega had shipped a bigger sibling called the Jazz, a cartridge that held a full gigabyte for around $500, later doubled to 2 gigabytes. Jazz was the professional machine. Photographers moved shoots on it. Studios cut audio straight off it. If the zip disk held your homework, the Jazz cartridge held somebody's job. The Jazz clicked too. Same failure, same cause, higher stakes, and by 1999 the 2 products were being named together in the same sentence by everybody investigating the problem. That is the mechanism. The reason this story is remembered 30 years later is what happened next, and it did not happen in a laboratory. It happened on a website. Steve Gibson, a programmer who had spent years writing disk recovery software, wrote a small utility called Trouble in Paradise. It did one thing. You ran it, it talked to your zip or jazz drive using low-level commands. And it told you the truth about the state of the head and the disk. The program was 49 kilobytes, small enough to download over a dial-up modem in about 10 seconds. There was no installer, which was the entire point, because a diagnostic that writes to your system can be blamed for the damage it finds. It read the drive's own internal status. Head-seek errors got counted and displayed. Then came the part that made people trust it. A red bar on a graph showing you how much of each side's pool of spare sectors had already been eaten by damage. On a dying cartridge, you could watch the bar fill in real time and know, before you lost anything, that the disk in your hand was finished. Here is the part Iomega never advertised. The drives kept their own error log inside the mechanism. Iomega's own bundled software never showed it to you. Gibson went in and read it directly, which no other utility bothered to do, and that is how a 49 kilobyte download ended up telling owners things the manufacturer's own tools would not. Gibson's site still hosts that file. The counter on it reads nearly 395,000 downloads. In 2021, 23 years after he wrote it, another programmer asked him for the original assembly code and ported the whole thing to old Macintosh machines so that people pulling cartridges out of a closet today could still get a straight answer about them. The company that built the drives never made anything like it. Sit with that number for a second, because of what it tells you. Almost 400,000 people went looking for an independent second opinion about a consumer product, and the second opinion they trusted was a 49 kilobyte program written by one man and given away free. That is the shape of the collapse. Not a defect. A defect plus a company that lets somebody else be the one telling the truth about it. Because Iomega's own answer, published on its own site, was this. A click from a zip drive is normal when a user inserts or ejects a disk, or when a file is saved or accessed. It compared the noise to the predictable snap of a camera. Repetitive clicking, the company said, is a symptom of a damaged drive or disk. Read that again as a customer standing in your kitchen holding a drive that has been clicking for 4 minutes. It is not false. Every sentence in it is defensible. It also answers a question nobody asked, and the question everybody asked, which was whether the company had shipped a defect, goes unmentioned. By early 1999, Iomega had a public figure. The click, it said, had affected fewer than 0.5% of all zip and jazz users. And that brings us to the number I promised you at the start. Fewer than 0.5% sounds like a rounding error. Run it against the company's own shipments, and it stops sounding like 1. 0.5% of the drives sold by the end of 1996 is 60,000 machines. Against the drives shipped over the product's life, it is 250,000. The company chose the smallest honest unit it had, and let the percentage do the work. And the real internal number, the count of failures sitting in Iomega's own files, has never been made public by anyone. Not in 1999, not in the settlement, and not once in the 27 years since. Keep that percentage in your head, because a court is about to spend 2 years and 150,000 documents on it, and still not put a real figure on the record. The bill came in 3 pieces. The first arrived in July of 1997, and it had nothing to do with clicking. Customers sued over technical support. The packaging promised easy installation. When installation was not easy, and you called for help, what you reached was a support line that charged up to $19.99 and was severely understaffed. Iomega settled by agreeing to run a free 24-hour automated support system. The second arrived in December of 1998 from the Federal Trade Commission, which charged the company with failing to fulfill rebate and merchandise requests under the mail order rule. Iomega paid a $900,000 civil penalty. The third was the click itself. In the fall of 1998, buyers filed a class action in Delaware State Court, alleging a design or manufacturing defect that destroyed drives, destroyed disks, and destroyed your data. Getting to a settlement took more than 2 years, and the examination of over 150,000 of the company's technical documents. The deal proposed in 2001 covered every American who bought a zip drive between January 1st, 1995 and March 19th, 2001. As many as 28 million people. What each of them got was rebates on Iomega products worth up to $40 and free technical support for questions about clicking. Coupons for the drive that ate the files. The fine print makes it worse. Those rebates were credit toward more Iomega hardware, which means the remedy offered to a person whose disks had been destroyed was a discount on buying more disks. Nowhere in the agreement did the company admit wrongdoing. A Delaware judge approved it on the 29th of June, 2001. One class member thought so little of the deal that he filed an appeal that July, and the attorneys on both sides of the room were paid in money. You can defend that outcome legally, and it is still the single worst sentence in the company's history, because it told 28 million customers exactly how much their data had been worth. There is one more piece of 1998 that almost never gets told with the rest of it, and it is the piece that shows how strange that year was inside the company. Iomega had a rival. SyQuest made removable cartridge drives and had owned the professional end of that market for a decade before the zip drive arrived at $199 and took the floor out from under it. The zip drive beat SyQuest, which is why you have never heard of it. Completely. On November 17, 1998, SyQuest filed for bankruptcy and suspended operations. 2 months after its bank cut its borrowing line from $30 million to about $10.75 million. That was 6 weeks after the Click of Death class action was filed against Iomega. And in January of 1999, Iomega bought SyQuest's intellectual property, fixed assets, and remaining inventory for $9.5 million in cash. Put those two events side by side and look at what you are seeing. In the same season, the company was buying the corpse of the competitor it had killed and defending itself against customers who said its own product destroyed their files. Both things were true. The winning was real and the rot was real, and they were happening in the same building at the same time. My read is that this is the most honest picture of Iomega there is. Not a company that failed. A company that won so fast, it never stopped to check what it had put in your house. While the lawyers worked, the business fell out from under them. On March 16, 1998, Iomega warned Wall Street that it expected to lose between $10 million and $25 million in the first quarter. The actual result was a loss of nearly $19 million on sales of $408 million. The stock dropped 24% in that month alone, and about 75% across 3 months. 3/4 of it, while you were still using the drive. 9 days after the warning, on March 25th, Kim Edwards resigned. Bloomberg called it the end of a reign. Under him, sales had gone from $141 million to $1.7 billion in 4 years. He left with the Click unresolved, the support lawsuit settled, and the FTC still coming. And then the ground itself moved. In August of 1998, Apple shipped the iMac with no floppy drive at all. Between mid-1998 and early 1999, Apple's desktop line dropped floppy drives and serial ports entirely and went to USB. Iomega adapted fast and shipped a USB version for it, which looked like a win from wherever you were standing at the time. It was not a win. It was the last good year. Recordable CD burners went from a professional purchase to a checkbox on a mid-range computer. In the middle of the 90s, a decent one ran near $1,000. By 1998, the good models were around 500, and by 2000, you could carry one out of a store for under 100 after the rebate. The blank discs fell faster than the drives did. 650 megabytes for about 50 cents. 6.5 times what a zip disk held, for a small fraction of what a zip disk cost. And here is the thing that finished it. Any computer with a plain CD drive could read what you burned. Mailing somebody a zip disk only worked if that person had also bought a zip drive. Mailing somebody a CD worked every time, to everyone, forever. Then came the object that ended the whole category. In 2000, a company in Singapore called Trek Technology started selling a stub of memory that pushed straight into a USB port, the shape you now lose in a kitchen drawer. 8 megabytes, $28. Late that same year, IBM put its own version into North American stores, built by an Israeli firm called M Systems, 8 megabytes for around $50. Next to a 100 megabyte cartridge, those numbers looked like a joke. The numbers did not stay small. And look at what those sticks did not contain. No cartridge, no spinning platter, nothing to knock out of alignment, and nothing anywhere inside them that could click. The zip drive did not lose because of the click. It lost because storage got cheap and solid at the same moment its reputation needed it to be neither. By 2003, Iomega had shipped more than 50 million zip drives and over 300 million disks worldwide, and the line was effectively over. A 750 megabyte version arrived in 2002, 4 years after you needed it, and the last models left production around 2006, which leaves the price tag. On April 8, 2008, MC announced it was buying Iomega for $213 million. A cash tender offer of $3.85 a share. $6.4 billion in 1996. $213 million in 2008. The same company, the same brand, the same town in Utah. Whatever value you thought you were holding in the spring of 1996, about 97% of it was gone by the time somebody wrote the final check. In August of 2012, MC folded the business into a joint venture with Lenovo. On June 11, 2013, that joint venture rebranded the product lines, and the Iomega name was pushed down to entry-level gear, and then quietly switched off. When Dell bought MC in 2016, the joint venture ended, and the last products came off the shelves. There is no bankruptcy in this story, no final day you could point to. The name was moved to a smaller shelf, and then the shelf was removed. Here is what stays with me. The click of death was survivable. Companies ship defects, recall them, eat the cost, and are forgiven inside a year. What was not survivable was the gap between what the company said and what you could hear with your own ears. When a person can put a drive to their ear and count the clicks, no press statement wins that argument. The company spent its credibility defending a percentage and lost the thing the percentage was supposed to protect. And the number is still missing. Fewer than half of 1% is the only figure Iomega ever gave. The 150,000 internal technical documents that the plaintiffs read went into a settlement, not into a public finding, and settlements are built specifically so that no number ever gets said out loud. Nobody outside that room has ever published how many drives failed. So the disks are still out there, somewhere between 300 million and every attic in America. Most of them still readable, if you can find a working drive, which is its own problem, because the surviving drives are 30 years old, and the failure was never fully explained. Somebody is going to open one of those boxes this year, plug it in out of curiosity, and hear it. Click. Pause. Click. If a zip drive ever ate something of yours, tell me what was on the disk. Every week this channel takes apart another machine that a few million households trusted, and the next one is a piece of hardware that sold in even bigger numbers and left even less behind.